What on earth is that outdated freeloader doing here? There's absolutely no space for you." My daughter-in-law's harsh yells reverberated across my seaside retreat like a brutal wound to the spirit. Right there, I stood frozen at the threshold of my very own dwelling, my fingers shaking around the keys as she shot me a look of pure disdain from the balcony. I'd shown up ahead of schedule that Friday dawn, expecting my peaceful haven to be deserted and quiet, just like always. But instead, I confronted a nightmare I'd carry forever. The entire property had been invaded by Megan's relatives. No fewer than 3 strange vehicles crammed my parking area, thumping tunes blasted out of my lounge, and the stench of scorched dishes hung heavy in the atmosphere. Kids dashed wildly over my patio, hollering and kicking a ball right into the crimson geranium containers I'd nurtured for decades. The grass I'd clipped personally each Saturday lay stomped flat and strewn with discarded beer bottles. Those rattan seats I'd picked out with such affection the previous year now sat draped in soggy linens and soiled garments. My lovely yard resembled a war zone in the wake of some chaotic gathering. Spotting me, Megan displayed zero remorse. Instead, she positioned herself firmly in the primary entrance, like she ruled the roost. She sported one of my cherished smocks, the one I'd stitched by hand a decade back. Her gaze carried that icy edge I recognized all too well, the same she'd flash my way during gatherings when she figured nobody noticed. "Megan, I had no idea you were around," I uttered, struggling for the steadiest tone amid my tightening throat. "This place belongs to me. I've retreated here every vacation stretch for 2 full decades." She burst into laughter, a vicious cackle that shrank me down to nothing. "Oh, come on," she sneered. "Robert assured me we could borrow the spot for as long as necessary. Anyway, we're putting it to good use. You only show up to gripe and spoil our kin's arrangements." Figures emerged from behind her sibling Veronica along with her pair of adolescents, her graying mom who eyed me like some trespasser, plus 3 total unknowns. An elderly fellow in a floral Hawaiian top appeared to be her kin, a youthful lady cradled an infant, and yet another guy puffed away leisurely on my veranda without a care. They all fixed on me with a blend of irritation and shock, treating my arrival in my personal abode as a major disruption. Megan's mom stepped forward, scanning me head to toe with scorn. "So this is the notorious in-law you complain about non-stop." She quizzed her girl in a taunting lilt. "I figured she'd be more formidable. She seems downright average." The spiteful chuckles from the group stabbed at me like daggers. Here I was, 70 years along in my modest journey outfit, getting sized up by outsiders on my turf. "Where's Robert?" I demanded, my pulse quickening. My boy must be nearby. He'd sort this out. Surely a mix-up. "Robert's tied up with work, as usual," Megan shot back, folding her limbs. "Not like you. He carries actual duties. Listen, Eleanor, you can't stay. Every bedroom's occupied. We're cooking up meals for the clan in the galley, and honestly, you'll just stir up pointless friction." I stood paralyzed. Right then, time itself seemed to halt. She was truly evicting me from my residence, the one I'd constructed stone by stone following my widowhood, the one I'd toiled endlessly as a tailor, night after night, to cover the costs. "Moreover," Megan pressed on with a venomous grin, "I cleared it with Robert and we decided this spot ought to see more action. It's ridiculous for it to gather dust while you lounge in the urban life. Our little ones require room to thrive." Her barbs struck like boulders. 2 decades of erecting this haven post my spouse's passing. 2 decades of scraping together every mortgage installment from stitching outfits for strangers' households. 2 decades tending to each facet, each bloom, each nook of this cherished escape, my sole escape from life's chaos. "This property is under my name, Megan," I forced out, my tone frailer than desired. "I hold the papers. I foot every utility charge." "Oh, spare me," she cut in, amplifying her pitch. "The same old routine. Yours, you pay. Blah, blah. Robert's your offspring, right? What belongs to you is his too, and his is mine. That's standard in real households." The youngsters had paused their games, and the crowd observed me quietly. Their stares weighed on me, assessing, anticipating my move. The shame scorched my face like flames, yet an inner resolve wouldn't shatter. It wouldn't grant them the spectacle they craved. One of the youths, apparently Megan's relative, edged nearer and regarded me boldly. Why not book a motel? Auntie's spot on, no extra spots left. All right, sweetheart, I concluded with a grin drawn from deep within. Be us, but my smile didn't quite touch my eyes. I grasped the full gravity of what was happening. Megan grinned triumphantly, convinced she'd come out on top. The rest of them appeared content, like they'd just seen justice served. Little did they realize the force they'd set loose. As I departed from the home I'd created, moving with measured, composed strides, my thoughts drifted back 2 decades to the era when this land was merely an overgrown patch brimming with potential and aspirations. I was 50 at the time, freshly widowed, with Robert just turning 25. It was only us standing firm against life's challenges, and I'd resolved to craft a sanctuary for our kin, the pivotal choice of my existence. I recalled that crisp August dawn when I showed up at the site in my sturdy boots and clutching my savings passbook. I'd scrimped every cent through endless hours as a tailor, fulfilling commissions from 4:00 a.m. right up to 11 p.m., bridal gowns, kids' uniforms, garment repairs, drapes for neighbors' spaces. My hands bore countless wounds from that ancient machine I still treasure. Yet each seam brought me nearer to my vision, like laying another stone. The designer eyed me skeptically as I explained my plan for a seaside retreat, all while being a lone dressmaker without a partner. Mrs. Crawford, this project will run you a minimum of $45,000, he warned, shuffling his documents. Can you truly afford such an outlay? I pulled out my account ledger and set it before him. Precisely $45,000 amassed, one coin at a time. Robert joined me on the initial day the crew arrived. His gaze sparkled with wonder, watching his mom transform hardship into possibility. Mom, is this really happening? A house by the ocean? He wondered while I outlined the base's layout. It's not just happening, my boy, I replied. We'll construct it ourselves. And that's exactly what occurred. Over the next 2 years, every Saturday and Sunday, I'd journey here to oversee the progress. I'd haul gravel, apply coats of paint, and set in every shrub in the yard. Robert tagged along whenever his university schedule allowed. Side by side, we selected the countertop tiles, the soft beige hues for the interiors, and the precise spots for windows to capture the ocean gusts. Upon completing the build, Robert embraced me on the porch and declared, Mom, you're the toughest lady I've ever met. One day, with my own kids, I'll share how my mother forged this haven through sheer dedication and grit. How could that very young man now stand by as his spouse disgraced me in the very spot I'd poured my soul into? The residence transcended mere structure and shelter. It embodied my self-reliance after losing my spouse. It demonstrated that a single woman could thrive independently, needing no one's aid. It served as my haven amid overwhelming pressures, my corner to reclaim the essence of Eleanor Crawford, beyond merely being Robert's parent. Every item within those walls carried its own tale. I acquired the dining set using surplus earnings from 3 solid months crafting quinceañera outfits. I fashioned the lounge drapes personally from discounted material. The cookware collection set me back $200, which I accumulated by forgoing fresh outfits for an entire year. What stung deepest, though, was revisiting the occasions when Megan visited as a welcome addition. In the early days of her union with Robert, she acted every bit the appreciative family member. "Oh, Mother Crawford, such a stunning place you own. You must feel immense pride in your achievements." She'd assist in meal prep, entertain the children along the shore, and even fetch me blooms from the bazaar during their stays. At what point had the shift happened? When did her gaze turn to viewing me as an encumbrance, rather than the figure who'd bestowed her a life partner? Perhaps it coincided with Robert's promotion to a higher salary, prompting her to quit her role, or when they purchased their urban dwelling, fostering her sense of elevation over the solitary tailor in a modest flat. The warnings had lingered for ages, yet I'd brushed them aside, her remarks on my years. "Mother Crawford, you ought to ease up. Overexerting yourself at this stage isn't wise." Her nudges regarding my wardrobe. "Why not pick up something trendier? Robert's income is solid these days. He could lend a hand." Her allusions to the property. Such a shame this spot sits vacant so often. Now it clicked. She'd orchestrated this far in advance. The takeover of my domain wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate, meticulously planned to degrade me and seize the legacy I'd forged through relentless toil. Heading to my vehicle, a sensation stirred within me that I hadn't felt in ages. A sharp, icy fury climbing from my core to my chest. Not the wild fury that prompts outbursts and chaos. Far more perilous. It was the calculated wrath of a survivor who'd endured destitution, bereavement, and years of unyielding labor. Megan had committed a grave error. She'd misjudged Eleanor Crawford. She saw me as a feeble elder who'd endure the slight in quiet. She had no clue she faced a woman who'd erected an MP. She was the kind of woman who'd bootstrapped her way up from nothing, single-handedly bringing up her son, staring down life's challenges, bare-handed, and coming out on top. Yet the deepest wound wasn't Megan's disloyalty. It was the quiet stab from Robert. My boy, the one I'd nursed through fevers, backed all the way through his university days, the fellow who'd sworn to shield me forever, had stood by while his spouse disrespected me in my very own home. I climbed into my vehicle, turned the key, and fired it up. A hotel room was my immediate need for the evening, but just for now, nothing lasting, since Megan Dyson had ignited a battle she couldn't possibly win, and I was battle-hardened. Dropping $85 at the Golden Sands Hotel that night was an unplanned hit to my wallet. I'd expected to crash in my familiar bed under my own roof. Instead, I was signing in like some random traveler, while squatters who acted like they owned the place took over my domain. Sleep evaded me entirely. Each attempt to shut my eyes brought back Megan's smug grin. Her venomous barbs echoed in my head. The shame scorched through me. By 6 a.m., I was up, sipping coffee, mapping out my strategy. I resolved to head back to the property for a level-headed discussion. Perhaps it was all a mix-up. Maybe the pressure of cramming so many relatives under one roof had sparked Megan's outburst. Surely Robert would step in and resolve it. He was my child, after all, more aware than most of the countless compromises I'd made for that home. Pulling up at 8 p.m., I discovered the entrance bolted, my front door secured against me. I had to buzz the chime at my residence like some outsider. Veronica, Megan's sibling, swung it open, clad in sleepwear and radiating irritation. "What brings you back?" she snapped, skipping any hello. "Morning," I responded, holding on to my poise. "I'm here to collect a few belongings and chat with Megan about this mess. She's out cold and your stuff's not inside anymore. We bagged it up and stashed it in the garage to clear the clutter." My belongings, reduced to garage bags. It hit me like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean, bagged up? This is my place, Veronica. Every item here belongs to me." "Listen, I don't want issues, but Megan filled me in on the details. Robert okayed her using the house, and you two supposedly sorted it already. No clue why you're stirring up trouble now." She stepped aside, but I entered feeling like a trespasser in my sanctuary. The air carried unfamiliar scents, odd cooking aromas, tobacco haze, and bargain bin fragrance. My lounge overflowed with air beds and scattered garments. The pieces I'd picked out with such affection now bore marks and chaos. Stepping into the kitchen nearly halted my pulse. That pristine space I'd crafted for endless family gatherings lay in ruins. Grease charred the range. The basin overflowed with rank, unwashed plates. They'd scorched my premium cookware with whatever slop they'd whipped up, leaving indelible damage. "Where's my fine china?" I demanded, voice quivering. A few shattered. The little ones were roughhousing. You get how kids are. Megan figured they were outdated relics anyway. My cherished plates, acquired piece by piece over years of scrimping to build the collection, reserved solely for celebrations and handled like heirlooms, now shattered and tossed aside like junk. I ascended to the primary suite, my haven for relaxation during this stay. The entry stood ajar, and there was Megan's mom, fully attired, sorting apparel into my wardrobe like it was hers. "Pardon me," I stated, striving for calm. "This is my space." Ah, my girl Megan laid it all out for me. "No stress. I'll mind everything nicely. See, I even packed your outfits into these sacks to avoid creases. My gowns, tops, footwear, my entire wardrobe crammed into trash liners like charity discards. Unknown children slumbered in my mattress, and my preferred cushions lay ground level, blotched with grime. "Madam, please remove these children from my bed," I insisted. "Your bed?" she mocked. "Come on. Megan mentioned you weren't claiming this anymore. The young ones deserve a proper rest, not the hard floor." It unfolded like a horrific dream. Within my walls, they cast me as the outsider, dismissing my 3 decades of labor and devotion as irrelevant, belittling my claim to my estate as mere elderly fancy. Descending the steps, shaking with fury, I sought out Megan. She lounged on the patio, sipping from one of my prized cups, draped in my robe, chatting away on her cell like the rightful owner. "Yeah, Mom, the place is stunning. Relax, I've got it under control. The mother-in-law got the message." Things had changed so drastically. She chuckled while talking, treating my embarrassment like some hilarious punchline. Spotting me there, she ended the call and shot me an irritated glance. "What brings you here this soon? I figured it was obvious there's no space for you anymore. Megan, we have to discuss this. This place belongs to me by law. I cover the property taxes. I handle all the upkeep costs. I've got every paperwork in order. Robert can't just hand you access to my home without my input. Oh, come on, spare me the courtroom theatrics. Robert's your boy, isn't he? Kids get what's theirs from moms and dads. It's just how it works. Plus, we're keeping the house in better shape than you ever did. See how lively it feels with family around, how joyful the whole vibe is. Joyful. You've wrecked my kitchen, smashed my dishes and stuffed my outfits into trash bags like junk. Hey, you've got tons of outdated stuff that's pointless now. We seized the chance for a full declutter. Consider it a helpful move on our part." I was stunned by her words. This intruder had stormed my home, ruined my possessions, disrespected my legacy and cherished recollections, and now had the nerve to claim she'd actually helped me out. "Where's Robert?" I demanded for the final time. "I mentioned he's at work, but relax, he's fully supportive of everything happening here. Actually, it originated from him. He put it like, time to put this place to good use instead of letting it gather dust for your rare drop-ins." That falsehood shattered my heart. Nobody understood my son like I did. Robert wouldn't orchestrate anything this sneaky without looping me in. Yet, why wasn't he present, standing up for me? Why let his spouse disrespect me so blatantly? Megan, let me make this crystal clear. You've got till tomorrow to pack up your whole clan and vacate my property. This mess stops right here. She let out that harsh cackle I'd grown all too familiar with. What? Gonna dial the cops. Drag your kid through a lawsuit. Get real, Eleanor. You realize you're powerless against us. We're kin, after all. Right then, I realized she nailed one truth. Yes, we were related, but she'd overlooked a key principle of genuine bonds. Packs don't turn on their own, and she'd just gone after the most seasoned and shrewd member of the group. I grinned and headed for the door. You're spot on, Megan. Family it is, and you'll learn the true weight of that word soon enough. Later that day, I came back with a pretext. I'd supposedly left some vital meds in my bathroom storage. Megan grumbled but allowed entry, though she didn't tag along. She was occupied setting up a cookout on my patio with her whole relatives' crew. Climbing the steps to my bath, I used the moment to thoroughly check the havoc they'd wrought on my abode. The discoveries were far grimmer than I'd pictured. My primary sleeping quarters weren't just claimed by Megan's mom and those unfamiliar children. They'd shifted my dressing table, gouged the glass with some abrasive tool, and crammed my compartments with their soiled undergarments. The loo was a disaster zone. My pristine white tub, custom fitted so I could unwind in soothing soaks after grueling work shifts, now bore dark streaks from hair colorant. The linens I'd stitched myself were discarded on the tiles, soiled and reeking. My hygiene items had vanished, probably pilfered by the womenfolk in Megan's clan. But what ignited pure fury in me was the breach in my hidden storage. Tucked away beyond the primary wardrobe, I'd stashed a compact nook for crucial files and treasured keepsakes. It was my ultimate sanctuary, unknown to outsiders. They'd unearthed and ransacked it. Papers were jumbled, a few littering the ground. The gems passed down from my mom were missing. The deed files for the property were creased, like they'd been rifled through sloppily. Yet the real shocker was spotting unfamiliar sheets, official forms bearing Robert and Megan's details. With shaky fingers, I snatched them and scanned hastily. It was an application to alter the deed. They aimed to shift the home's title to Robert, arguing that I, given my senior years and supposed cognitive decline, could no longer oversee assets of worth. Cognitive decline. For me, the lady who'd flawlessly overseen her money matters over 7 decades, amassed wealth from nothing, and still earned a living while staying financially self-reliant. They sought to brand me unfit in mind just to swipe my residence. The filing was from the prior week. This proved the takeover of my home wasn't impromptu. It formed a calculated scheme to seize control, twisting legal channels to suit them. At the documents base, something froze me solid. A valuation report from a property expert. They'd valued my seaside dwelling at $300,000, and scribbled in Megan's script was a note. With this cash, we could snag a larger flat and ship, sending the children to a private school. All we require is for R to put his signature on the paperwork, and for the elderly woman to avoid stirring up any issues. The elderly woman. That's the label they slapped on me. The elderly woman expected to stay quiet as they ransacked every bit of what I'd constructed over my lifetime. I stuffed all the paperwork into my purse. It served as the proof I required to grasp the full scope of matters. This went beyond a mere family intrusion. It amounted to a calculated heist, a cunning scheme to deprive me of my lifelong achievements, with my own flesh and blood playing a key role. I stepped out of the wardrobe and approached the window in my sleeping quarters. From that vantage, I overlooked the patio where Megan's whole clan was reveling. Blasting tunes filled the air. They fired up the grill on my recent purchase and served meals on my patio dishes. The kids dashed through my yard, yelling and frolicking unattended, crushing the blooms I'd nurtured with such care. Yet the deepest wound came from spotting Veronica, Megan's sibling, snapping selfies across various spots in my residence, striking poses like it was her fresh domain. One shot had her lounging in my cherished swing seat. Another captured her in the cooking area, doling out beverages like the perfect host. She posted them online with captions such as, "Clan getaway at our fresh seaside retreat, graced by this heaven, our fresh home." It was no longer the clan's abode. It had become her fresh home. I snapped images of it all via my mobile, the chaos, the harm, the marks, the tossed garments. Should this escalate to courtroom clashes, I'd require records of their handling of my belongings. As I descended the steps, Megan's voice carried from yet another call. This round, she made no effort to hush when our eyes met. "No, Mother, relax. The attorney assures it's straightforward. With Robert as the sole offspring, he can secure the estate ahead of time, citing his mom's diminished capacity. And the moment the property bears his title, we hold full sway over it. advance claim on grounds of incapacity. Their aim? To brand me mentally unfit and plunder my legacy before I even passed. Yes, we've forwarded the forged health records. We shelled out $50 to that quack from the budget health spot to endorse a diagnosis of senile dementia. Robert hesitated initially, but I convinced him it's best for the little ones. Bogus health files, a dishonest physician, a fabricated senile dementia assessment. My very boy persuaded that divesting me of my assets benefited the children. The talk dragged on, but I tuned out the rest. My reality was crumbling, not solely from the treachery, but from the intricate web of deceit. They'd mapped out each element, each falsehood, each phony record needed to lawfully plunder me. I exited the dwelling without a farewell. No words remained worth exchanging with that individual. Language had forfeited its purpose. This transcended a kin squabble fixable by chats and warm sentiments. It was outright conflict, and they'd launched the opening salvo with the vilest tools at hand: deceptions, sham papers, healthcare graft, and twisting my own offspring to their will. Yet they'd committed a grave error. They'd misjudged their adversary. They figured Eleanor Crawford was a vulnerable senior, yielding to the initial court warning. They had no clue they faced a lady who'd forged all they coveted from scratch, a lady versed in money's true worth, in diligent labor, and in genuine fairness. Now came my phase to strategize. On Monday dawn, Robert at last appeared. He pulled up to the residence in his recent ride that Toyota acquired using his raise from the prior year's job bump. I watched him ease into my entryway like no rift had occurred, like his relatives hadn't overrun my space and upended my existence across a mere couple of days. I lingered on the inn's deck, observing my home through field glasses snagged from a gear shop. I'd passed the evening alert, sorting the files I'd uncovered, jotting details, and gearing up for this encounter. I anticipated Robert's arrival in time. He must. Their scheme demanded his direct endorsement. I observed him peck Megan's cheek in greeting, embrace a few of the youngsters scampering in the yard, and behave as if this were utterly routine, as if his parent hadn't endured shame and eviction from her own turf, as if he wasn't complicit in a sophisticated swindle to seize my holdings. I held off 20 minutes prior to heading to the residence. I wanted him at ease, convinced he commanded the scene. Upon pressing the chime, he swung the door wide. "Mother," he uttered with that contrived grin he flashed upon sensing his misdeed. The identical grin from his youth when I'd busted him fibbing on school marks. "How are things? Megan mentioned your weekend visit. Megan mentioned it." I echoed deliberately, weighing every syllable. "That's the extent of what she shared, Robert." "Sure. She described it as a minor mix-up, and that all's sorted. Everything was supposedly resolved. I figured we'd already gone over this." "Over what, precisely?" Robert got jittery. He began fidgeting with his car keys, just like he did whenever he was fibbing about using the home. "You hardly ever show up here, Mom, and Megan's relatives require a spot for holiday gatherings." "Ah, got it. And did we discuss labeling me as mentally unfit too?" His complexion drained to a ghostly pallor. "What do you mean? What on earth are you referring to?" I pulled the files from my purse and laid them out before him. "This is what I'm referring to, Robert. Petition for asset handover because of the owner's cognitive impairment. Ring any bells?" His fingers shook as he grabbed the sheets. For an instant, I glimpsed my actual child, the frightened kid I'd brought up single-handedly over countless years. Yet that glimpse faded in mere seconds when Megan stepped up behind him. "What's happening?" she demanded in that domineering tone she favored. "Robert, didn't we decide there's no need for discussion?" "Megan." She discovered the documents. "Which ones?" she inquired, pretending purity. "Robert, your mother is muddled once more. You remember how she acts under pressure." "I'm not muddled, Megan, and I'm not senile despite that bogus doctor's note you shelled out $50 for claiming otherwise." Her facade crumbled utterly, her gaze brimming with raw malice. "You were eavesdropping on our personal talks. I was safeguarding my residence from intruders and pilferers. Pilferers, she bellowed. We're no pilferers. Robert is your boy. He's entitled to this estate. Robert can claim his inheritance after I pass, not plunder it from me while I still breathe. Oh, come on. You're ancient already, Eleanor. How much longer do you expect to stick around? Why not allow us to make real use of this place rather than letting it rot vacant, just for your sporadic trips? The quiet that ensued was overwhelming. Robert hung his head like a scolded youngster. Megan's mom and Veronica had emerged from the dwelling and were eavesdropping from the porch. The children halted their games and observed us with keen interest. Did you actually imply that my mom should speed up her death to free up her home for you? Robert eventually raised his tone. I never meant that, Megan protested. I only pointed out she doesn't require so much real estate at her stage in life. Who gave you the authority to judge my needs? I challenged her outright. Who do you imagine yourself to be, barging into my home, wrecking my possessions, swiping my jewels, and scheming to rob me of my lifelong achievement using forged papers? We took nothing. Really? Then where's the pearl necklace my mother bequeathed me? Where's my departed husband's gold timepiece? Where are the silver pieces I kept hidden in my concealed cabinet? Robert stared at me astonished. What silver pieces? The ones your spouse is aware of since she rifled through all my confidential files in search of schemes to plunder me. That's false, Megan shrieked, though her expression betrayed her. Robert, I addressed my son in the steadiest tone I could muster. I want you to be honest with me immediately. Were you aware of the asset transfer forms? Tell her, Megan barked at him. Admit you knew. Admit you consented. Admit it's past time you prioritized your true household over coddling your mother forever. Be quiet, Megan. Robert finally erupted. Just be quiet. Silence engulfed us all. Robert never shouted at his spouse. He was reserved. He dodged disputes. He always chased familial harmony. Witnessing him unravel that way stunned everyone. Mom, he uttered, eyes welling with tears. I never intended for it to reach this point. But you were in on those forms, right? Yes or no? Yes, he murmured. I was. My heart shattered into countless shards. Suspecting my son's disloyalty was one matter, but hearing him own up to it personally was devastating, and that phony health assessment as well. Megan claimed it was merely a routine step all offspring must take once parents hit a particular age, that it was standard, that it was for your safeguard. Safeguard me from what, Robert? From poor choices regarding your funds? What poor choices? Using my own cash to maintain my vacation property. No, Mom, but Megan has a point. The place stands idle much of the year, and we face costs. We have children with demands, and so you chose to plunder me rather than seek my aid. We're not plundering you, Megan cut in once more. We're aiding you in managing your finances more sensibly, aiding me sensibly by fabricating health records, fabricating my dementia, and storming my home like bandits. That's over, Megan hollered. Robert, lay out the facts definitively. Tell her you've already consulted the attorney. The forms are set. Only your sign-off remains to shift the property. Tell her it's time you behaved like an adult rather than a compliant kid. Robert gazed at me, his eyes laden with guilt and anguish. Mom, I'm truly sorry. You're apologizing, yet simultaneously set to deprive me of my home. It's not depriving. It's secure. You're jeopardizing your children's tomorrow by ruining your mother's today. He remained silent. He simply froze there, torn between his wife urging him to seal my financial doom and his mother gazing at him with shattered eyes. It's fine, Robert, I said at last. I get it. I know where your true allegiances rest. I started heading back to my vehicle, then paused and faced them all once more. One final point. You figured Eleanor Crawford was some vulnerable elderly woman who'd surrender without resistance. You couldn't have been more mistaken. I battled destitution and emerged victorious. I conquered being a widow and triumphed. I constructed this estate stone by stone long before you entered the picture, and now I'll battle you and claim victory here as well." The victorious grin vanished from Megan's expression. For the first time, terror flickered in her gaze. "With which attorney?" she inquired, her voice quivering. "You lack the funds for court fights." I grinned. "Who said I'm broke, sweetheart?" I departed my home with my pride preserved, though my spirit was crushed. Robert had decided. He'd picked quick cash over the woman who'd nurtured, schooled, and cherished him, without conditions for 45 years. He'd favored his spouse's cunning outbursts over the quiet whisper of his inner moral compass. But if they imagined I'd hide away weeping in some shadowy spot, they were utterly deluded. I headed directly to the bank. I had to verify precisely how much capital I possessed for this conflict. Over the past 20 years, I'd saved diligently, even once the mortgage was cleared. Each month, I'd set aside $300 from my retirement checks and earnings from my tailoring gigs. From my early days, I'd grasped that hoarded funds meant strength. It meant protection. It meant independence. The branch head, Alex Peterson, had been acquainted with me for 15 years. He was a no-nonsense expert fellow who'd long admired my budgeting habits. "Eleanor, what brings you in today?" "I require the precise totals from every account of mine, and we'd like to chat about a sensitive legal issue." As he displayed the figures on his monitor, I smiled genuinely for the first time in days. I held $87,000 in reserves, along with $23,000 in time deposits and $12,000 in my current account, $122,000 altogether. Megan had erred in her assumptions. She viewed me as a destitute senior surviving on a paltry stipend alone. She had no clue that Eleanor Crawford had toiled as a dedicated seamstress her entire life, stashing away every cent to shield against scenarios just like this. "Mr. Peterson, please block any outsider efforts to tap into my holdings and prepare a formal bank statement affirming my full mental fitness to handle my affairs." "Absolutely, Eleanor. Trouble brewing." "My relatives are pushing to label me mentally unfit so they can seize my belongings." His expression turned grave. "That's grave indeed. Want a referral to an expert attorney?" "Yes, if you would." He shared the contact details for Thomas Gallagher, an attorney focused on domestic disputes and financial deceit. "He's top tier for matters like this. Mention I recommended you." I exited the bank invigorated, a fresh surge pulsing in my blood. It surpassed mere financial reassurance for my defense. It was the sharp focus of a defined strategy ahead. From the parking area, I dialed Thomas Gallagher. His assistant scheduled me for that very afternoon. "He can meet at 4 Seek, pressing matter." Extremely so. The morning's remainder I devoted to assembling every paper I'd gathered. The bogus deed transfer forms, images of the home's destruction, the inventory of pilfered goods, and duplicates of my valid ownership deeds. I also output prints of Veronica's online posts flaunting her fresh seaside residence. By 4:01, I occupied a seat in Thomas Gallagher's refined workspace. He was a gentleman in his mid-60s, silver-tressed with keen vision and courteous demeanor that bred instant confidence. "Mrs. Crawford, recount the full tale from the start. Leave out nothing." I recounted it all. The home intrusion, Megan's degradations, the deceitful paperwork, the fabricated health assessment, the missing heirlooms, Robert's disloyalty. He jotted thorough records, posing sharp queries that revealed his seasoned handling of such disputes. "Do you possess the authentic ownership files?" "Indeed, everyone. The property stands entirely under my title. I covered every cost of the build and retain all invoices spanning the last 20 years. Has the physician who allegedly endorsed the cognitive decline evaluation ever checked you over?" "I've never laid eyes on him. I don't even recognize his identity." "Perfect. That's document forgery, a serious offense under federal law." "Any proof regarding the taken valuables?" "Certainly for some. My departed husband's timepiece, in particular, carries $3,000 in coverage. Thomas grinned. Mrs. Crawford, your position is rock solid, extremely so. We've got unlawful entry, theft, paperwork tampering, and efforts to swindle assets. And there's potential medical fraud involved too. Your relatives really stepped into a mess this time. What steps can we take? A few key actions. For starters, we'll initiate an eviction proceeding tomorrow based on unlawful occupation. Next, we'll notify the authorities about the stolen jewelry. Then we'll alert the Medical Licensing Board and the prosecutor's office regarding the forged health records. Finally, we'll seek a protective order to stop them from misusing your identity any further. How much time will this require? The eviction could happen right away if the judge spots obvious proof of unauthorized entry. In situations like yours, with no valid claim to the place, the courts move fast. What's the total expense? My charges come to $5,000 to handle the whole matter. Are you able to cover that? I can settle it right now if you'd like. His grin grew broader. I appreciate partnering with clients who are committed to their case. Mrs. Crawford, your kin figured you were a vulnerable senior, but they misjudged you badly. You're a woman who's ready for battle. I've spent 70 years gearing up to shield myself from life's blows, attorney. No plans to quit anytime soon. That's the spirit. One crucial point. Are you prepared to see this through to the end? Once we launch, your bond with your son might shatter beyond repair. I paused briefly, reflecting on Robert. The child he'd once been, the potential man he might have turned into, the spineless figure he'd become. Attorney, my boy sold me out for cash, branded me unfit in the mind for profit, and shamed me openly for gain. If ties snap so readily over dollars, they weren't genuine to begin with. And should he later express remorse or seek forgiveness amid the fight, he ought to have considered the cost before inking deals to plunder me. Sorries after getting busted don't hold weight. Thomas inclined his head approvingly. Got it. We'll move ahead on all fronts. Bright and early tomorrow, we'll submit every claim. There's something else, attorney. I need them to grasp how thoroughly they misread their adversary. I want the fallout from stabbing kin in the back to hit hard and last forever. What's your idea? Let's make this litigation open to the public eye. Let their circle, friends, locals, everyone, learn the full extent of their treachery. I aim for the social backlash to match whatever financial penalties we can secure. Filings are accessible to all, and we can tip off the regional press about this outrageous affair. I departed that office transformed from the woman who'd arrived. Gone was Eleanor Crawford, the scorned and demeaned parent. In her place stood Eleanor Crawford, armed with every judicial tool available to reclaim her ground. That evening, from my hotel suite, I dialed my sibling Laura in Texas. I shared the entire saga. Eleanor, it's unbelievable that Robert could pull this after all you've given up for him. The sacrifices don't count anymore, Laura. What's vital is reclaiming what's mine. Want me to fly out and support you? No, sis. This fight's mine alone. But I value the gesture. I ended the call and settled onto the mattress, gazing out at my residence. Through the window, the glows flickered, tunes lingered in the air. The party droned on, oblivious to the storm. The next day promised a rude awakening for the lot of them. In the shadows, I smirked. Eleanor Crawford was back in the fray. Come Tuesday at 8 a.m., Thomas Gallagher pulled up to my home with 3 official papers, a law enforcement officer, and a certified witness. I showed up simultaneously via cab, clad in my sharpest gray attire and clutching a dossier packed with proof. Megan's clan was midway through morning meal on my patio when the procession of vehicles halted in the front. I watched Megan fumble her mug upon spotting the squad car's marked plates. "Morning," Thomas announced in an authoritative, steady tone. "I'm Thomas Gallagher, counsel for Mrs. Eleanor Crawford, the rightful proprietor here. We're serving an urgent notice to vacate due to unauthorized presence." Megan bolted from the deck, terror etched on her features. "What's the meaning of this? This belongs to my spouse. We're entitled to stay." "Ma'am," the officer interjected. "Can you produce paperwork showing lawful access to these premises?" My spouse. He's the property owner's child. He authorized us. And where's your spouse right now? He's working. Thomas produced the initial files. Right here. The original title stands solely in Mrs. Eleanor Crawford's name, plus the past 5 years' tax payments, all from her, and now this judge-issued prompt removal for entering without permission. Megan's mom emerged at her side, agitation plain. "What's happening?" "What's happening," I stated evenly yet resolutely, "is that you've unlawfully seized my home. They broke into my home without permission, wrecked my possessions, swiped my valuables, and attempted to seize my entire legacy with forged paperwork. You're about to deal with the full weight of the law." Veronica stepped outside, capturing the whole scene on her smartphone. "This qualifies as elder mistreatment. That woman is unhinged and won't stop bothering us." "Miss," the notary stepped in. "Cease the filming right now. We're conducting an official judicial action, and you're not permitted to record it." Thomas pulled out additional files. "I've also prepared an official accusation regarding the pilfering of jewels and precious items, complete with an itemized inventory of everything taken and their approximate worths." "We never took a single thing," Megan shouted. "What about the pearl earrings that were your mother-in-law's?" the cop inquired. I have no idea what pearls you're referring to, and the gold timepiece from Mrs. Crawford's deceased spouse, covered by insurance up to $3,000. Megan fell quiet. Humiliation flushed her cheeks crimson. "On top of that," Thomas went on, "we've got proof of tampering with health records in an effort to label Mrs. Crawford as cognitively impaired. That's a serious offense at the federal level, carrying potential jail sentences." "Health records?" the officer queried. "What sort of records?" I handed over the files I'd discovered. A bogus assessment alleging I suffer from senile dementia, endorsed by a physician who'd never even met me, bought off for a mere $50 to pave the way for looting my assets. The policeman scanned the papers and scowled. "This looks extremely grave, ma'am," he told Megan. "You shelled out for a phony health evaluation." I didn't do that. We only aimed to. We just meant to assist her. She's far too elderly to oversee all those estates, and that's your excuse for trying to pilfer her residence with bogus filings." Right then, Robert sped up in his vehicle. He jumped out, his face etched with utter panic. No doubt, word of the authorities' presence had reached him. "What's happening?" he demanded, gasping for air. "Your spouse and her relatives are facing formal removal from your mother's estate due to unlawful entry," Thomas clarified. "And you, Mr. Crawford, are named as a co-conspirator in an alleged scheme to defraud her of her holdings. Defrauding assets." I presented the evidence. "Those deed assignment forms you plan to endorse to claim my home. Robert, the ones your wife stashed away in my hidden storage space." Robert's complexion drained of color. "Mom, let me clarify." "No need for clarifications. You've already chosen your path. But I never intended for things to escalate like this." "Escalate to what?" "Me standing up for myself. You figured I'd remain silent as they plundered my hard-earned achievements." Megan sidled up to Robert and murmured into his ear. He shook his head in refusal. "What exactly is your wife suggesting, Robert?" I pressed. "She wants me to inform the officers that you're suffering from psychological issues, that you fabricate stories." "What? And how will you respond?" Robert met my gaze directly for the first time in ages. I glimpsed the frightened child he'd once been, yet I also recognized the timid adult he'd grown into. I haven't decided what to tell them, Mom. In that case, keep quiet." Thomas retrieved the final set of papers. "Mr. Robert Crawford, this is your summons. You've got 72 hours to present yourself in family court and respond to the allegations of aiding and abetting an effort to swindle an elderly person's assets. Aiding and abetting. Your endorsement appears on the asset transfer applications. Your identity is listed on the petition to deem your mother unfit of mind. You greenlit the illicit exploitation of this residence. You're accountable under the law for every bit of harm caused. But I'm her child. She can't take legal action against her own offspring. Mr. Crawford, the officer stated firmly, the legal system doesn't overlook family ties in matters of deception and larceny. Wrongdoing remains wrongdoing, regardless of the perpetrator's relation. Megan's mom began sobbing. This isn't right. We're kin. Kin don't drag each other to court. But kin also refrain from robbing one another, I countered. You were the first to shatter that bond. Thomas glanced at his timepiece. Precisely 120 minutes to gather your own effects and vacate the premises. Anything owned by Mrs. Crawford stays put. The officer will oversee to confirm nothing else walks out with you. 2 hours, Veronica bellowed. No way that's feasible. We've got children. We've got bags to pack. Well, you ought to have considered that prior to unlawfully occupying another's domain, the notary shot back. Megan drew near me, eyes brimming. But these weren't sorrowful drops anymore. They were fueled by sheer fury. You'll regret this, she snarled at me. You'll suffer greatly for shaming us like this. Robert, speak up. Protect your loved ones. Robert regarded me with a stare I'd never encountered. It lacked affection. It held no admiration. It showed no remorse. Just bitterness. Raw bitterness. Mom, are you truly pushing this forward? Robert, I've already committed to it. You forced my hand. But we're blood. Blood. I lingered on the term deliberately. Blood relations break into homes. Blood relations snatch treasures. Blood relations concoct false health files. Blood relations demean their elders. Trespassers in the open. We simply desired for you to plunder me, yet I demand retribution. Thomas snapped his file shut. Gentlemen and ladies, you've got 2 hours. The timer is already ticking. I observed as Megan's whole clan scurried to the dwelling like frantic insects, snatching their belongings, shouting accusations and pointing fingers amid the chaos. Yet I remained rooted in my yard, witnessing their scheme to ruin me crumble utterly. Eleanor Crawford had struck back decisively and claimed victory in the opening skirmish. Those 2 endless hours of my existence flew by like a chaotic family saga on fast forward. From the porch of my reclaimed home, I beheld their meticulously orchestrated incursion disintegrate before my eyes. Megan's mom cracked first. Following 30 minutes of sobs and shouts, she slumped on the steps, declining to assist with the loading. It's all on you, Megan, she bellowed at her child. You assured me the issue was resolved. You claimed the elderly woman had agreed to it all. Mother, be quiet and lend a hand with the bags, Megan shot back, frantically stuffing garments into trash liners. That elderly woman laid a snare for us. She pretended to be a vulnerable senior, but she actually had attorneys and hidden funds. Veronica captured the entire ordeal via her cell phone. But these weren't clips of triumph over her fresh seaside residence anymore. Instead, they documented the shameful spectacle of a household ousted by law as unlawful intruders. This footage will spread like wildfire, she hollered while recording her siblings' frantic sorting. The world will learn how they mistreated us. Folks will witness the true nature of this woman. The cop seized her device. Ma'am, we've cautioned you regarding filming sans permission amid official actions. Persist, and you'll face charges for hindering legal processes. The youngsters dashed through the rooms, wailing and shrieking, baffled by the need to abandon their idyllic haven of play. One lad, roughly 8 years in age, neared me. Lady, why are you forcing us away? We haven't committed any offense. My spirit ached slightly. The kids bore no blame in this mess. They'd been manipulated as pieces in their guardian's strategy. I'm not evicting you for wrongdoing, I murmured gently. Rather, I'm requiring departure since this belongs to me, and your kin entered uninvited. But my mother declared it ours henceforth. Your mother erred. Megan caught the exchange and stormed over in rage. Leave my offspring alone. You lack authority to muddle their thoughts further. I'm not muddling anything. You did that by hauling them to property that wasn't yours. This abode is ours. Robert is her offspring. Offspring receive legacies from progenitors. Offspring receive when progenitors perish, not while they're vital and sound. You're quite advanced in years. Why hoard such vast estate in your twilight? Thomas stepped in. Madam, each remark you utter regarding my patron's seniority is logged as further proof of bias against the aged and emotional torment toward an elder. Megan fell instantly mute. Robert had been hauling luggage to the vehicles wordlessly, dodging my stare. Yet with merely half an hour till the limit, he at last confronted me. Mother, we must converse. There's no further discussion, Robert. Actually, there is. See, I concede events spiraled beyond grasp, yet we might mend it. We could forge a kin pact absent attorneys and authorities. What sort of pact? You'd retain the dwelling naturally. We acknowledge the blunder of arriving unannounced, and in return, you withdraw every suit and the pilfered gems. We'll restore all that was erroneously seized. Erroneously. Indeed, amid the turmoil of relocation, items became jumbled. Robert, do you genuinely believe I'll deem pilfering my parents' gems an error? Mother, it wasn't pilfering, it was a mix-up. And the fabricated health document was likewise a mix-up. He stayed mum, and the petition for asset shift owing to cognitive decline was also a mix-up. He offered no reply. And the public shaming by labeling me a leech was similarly a mix-up. That originated from me. That came from Megan. But you witnessed it. You observed your spouse degrading me within my residence, and you uttered nothing. I lacked words. You possessed precise words, Robert. You recognized the need to shield your mother, yet opted for silence to avoid clashing with your spouse. Megan was under strain, Mother. Her extended family crowded the space. The young ones were agitated, and that justified her slurs against me on my turf. Robert grew frantic. Fine. Megan acted poorly. I own that. What more do you seek from my lips? I seek your honesty. I seek your confession that you schemed to claim my home via forged papers. I seek your admission of disloyalty for gain. I didn't betray for gain. I acted for my household. And what of me, Robert? Am I not your kin? Absolutely, you count as kin. Yet Megan and the children come first for me these days, so now your top duty is to steal from your own mom. It wasn't theft, it was safeguarding my kids tomorrow by ruining the today of the woman who brought you into the world. Robert clutched his head in exasperation. Mother, you're missing the point. Our costs are enormous. The little ones require elite education, outfits, getaways. Megan's place is falling apart and needs fixes. I toil around the clock, yet the cash never stretches far enough. And that's precisely why you figured my lifetime efforts should cover your debts. You dwell by yourself in a tiny flat. You have no need for such a grand seaside home. It's squandered. There it stood. The reality had at last surfaced. Robert hadn't turned against me out of devotion to his loved ones. He'd turned against me because he believed I didn't merit the fruits of my decades of labor. Squandered. I let the term linger deliberately. Mother, I didn't intend it harshly. Are my 3 decades of nonstop labor pointless? No. But was my habit of pinching every cent to construct this property pointless? Mother, come on. Was my devotion to bringing you up solo after losing your father pointless? Stop it, Robert burst out. It's the identical routine with you every time, constantly dredging up all your forfeitures, constantly guilting me for pursuing my existence. The quiet that ensued was total. Even Megan paused her packing to overhear. That's the core of it, I stated with a serenity that caught me off guard. You didn't sell me out for funds. You sold me out because my offerings on your behalf turned into an emotional weight you couldn't handle. I never claimed that. You didn't need words. You just bellowed it. Robert lingered there, panting hard, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment and fury. Do you realize what's the most heartbreaking part of this mess, my boy? I questioned him. Had you simply requested aid outright, I would have stepped in. Had you confessed your money woes, we'd have tackled it side by side. Instead, you opted to plot in secret, shame me in front of everyone, and attempt to swipe my assets through legal tricks. Why, Robert? Why pick the most vicious route? Because I was certain you'd refuse. How could you be sure without even trying? Because you've forever clung tight to your wealth, always so domineering over your hard-earned gains. Domineering. Robert, I covered your university fees. I got you that initial vehicle. I fronted the initial payment for your residence. I've bailed you out money-wise countless times as an adult, yet each instance came with strings, always hammering home that it was your earnings, your forfeitures. It all clicked for me then. Robert hadn't stabbed me in the back from avarice. He'd done it from ego. His sense of manhood couldn't tolerate ongoing reliance on his aging parent. Listen, Robert, I declared at last, you make a valid point. I ought to have pushed you towards self-reliance earlier in life. I should have allowed you to handle your issues without my constant interventions. But the history can't be rewritten. And now you'll get the chance for full autonomy, since moving forward you'll manage every money matter on your own, without any support from me. Thomas glanced at his timepiece. Everyone, you've got 10 minutes remaining. The closing frenzy was utter mayhem. Megan barking commands, the children sobbing, Robert hauling the final bags with an expression of utter surrender. Once they were all loaded into their vehicles, Megan lowered her glass and hurled one final warning my way. This isn't finished, you sour hag. We'll fight the ruling. We'll demonstrate you're unhinged. By all means, I responded steadily. My attorney is ready for you. The vehicles sped off, stirring gravel along my path. Robert departed last. He glanced my way through the mirror, but I'd already faced away. Thomas drew near. How are you holding up, Mrs. Crawford? Exhausted, I admitted truthfully, yet liberated. Liberated from faking a joyful household, liberated from justifying disloyalty through parental affection, liberated from acting like pardon and amnesia could mend this. The lawman bid farewell. The public clerk wrapped up his paperwork. Thomas passed me the entrance fob to my dwelling. Mrs. Crawford, your property is now formally yours again. I ascended the porch stairs and settled into my go-to seat. For the first instance in 7 days, I sat solo in my space, though the concluding scene of this drama remained pending. 7 days post-removal, my coastal retreat had reclaimed its prior calm. I'd brought in expert cleaners for $700 to wipe out every sign of the takeover. The odd odors had vanished, the marks erased, and my belongings restored to their spots. Yet true reckoning was only starting. Thomas rang me that Friday bearing tidings that brought my first grin in ages. Mrs. Crawford, I've got key developments. The physician who endorsed the phony mental decline document has faced a ban from the health authority. The probe uncovered that he'd approved no fewer than 12 such bogus evaluations. In return for money and the serious repercussions facing Robert and Megan. Oh, and that's the highlight. The district attorney chose to move forward with felony accusations of property fraud and collusion. This isn't merely a lawsuit anymore. It's turned into a full-blown criminal prosecution. What does that imply? It suggests they might end up behind bars if convicted. Plus, it indicates that the attorney costs they've shelled out so far have been staggering. That very afternoon, an out-of-the-blue phone call came through. It was Veronica, Megan's sibling, sobbing over the line. Eleanor, I beg you, we have to discuss this. Megan's at her wit's end. Robert's already burned through more than $15,000 on legal counsel, and the court battles are far from over. And how does that concern me? We want to say sorry. We want to make amends. Are you looking to make amends, or do you just need me to withdraw the complaints because your funds are drying up? Please, ma'am. Megan has children depending on her. Robert risks getting fired if word of this spreads at work. She ought to have considered her children prior to scheming to swindle me. And Robert should have weighed his career before inventing phony health records. But you've reclaimed your home already. You've come out ahead. Why continue to make us suffer? Because reclaiming the property doesn't wipe away the embarrassment. It doesn't restore the pilfered gems. It doesn't undo the emotional scars from being double-crossed by my own child. We can hand over the gems. They're stored at my mother's place. The gems you snatched unintentionally. The ones you unwittingly lifted amid the chaos of the relocation. Please, ma'am. Veronica, inform your sister that if she wishes to speak with me, she should show up here herself and deliver every piece of the pilfered jewelry. I ended the call, experiencing an odd blend of triumph and sorrow. The triumph stemmed from seeing their scheme to ruin me unravel completely. The sorrow arose from realizing my bond with Robert was likely severed for good. 2 days afterward, Megan showed up on my doorstep. She arrived solo, sans Robert, clutching a sack and with puffy eyes from weeping. "Eleanor, I've come to give back your belongings and express my regret. Step inside." She perched on the sofa in my den like a chastised kid, placed the sack on the coffee table, and started pulling out my treasures item by item. "These are the pearl studs. This is the gold timepiece. These are the silver medallions. And this is the chain that we also grabbed erroneously. Ma'am, honestly, I grabbed them, but not with intent to pilfer. It was to pawn them. We were in dire need of funds. We're drowning in bills. Robert squandered cash on poor ventures last year. We're delinquent on the home loan. Our cards are tapped out and the little ones require education. And that justified you defrauding me. It wasn't fraud. It was seeking your aid indirectly through breaking into my residence and shaming me in front of everyone." Megan broke down in tears. "Eleanor, I confess, I acted terribly, awfully so. But I was frantic when Robert mentioned you owned this lovely property and scarcely occupied it. I assumed you might let us have it without a fuss. I never aimed to seize it from you. I simply hoped to occupy it during your absences. Then, once we realized the cost of upkeep for 2 properties, we decided it might be wiser for the deed to legally belong to Robert to sidestep future disputes." Disputes, Megan. You sparked the disputes by doctoring health papers. That came from the bargain basement attorney we sought out. He claimed it was the quickest method to shift assets among relatives. An attorney urged you toward deceit. He insisted it didn't count as deceit among close kin. I paused briefly, absorbing the depth of their foolishness and innocence on display. They'd wrecked their finances and standing in the law by heeding a shady, low-tier counsel. "Where's Robert?" I inquired. He refused to join me. He claims you're no longer his parent." Those words stung deeper than anticipated, yet they also validated my choice. He claims I'm no longer his parent. Indeed, he believes a true parent wouldn't drag her child to court, that you prioritized wealth over kin. In your view, Megan, I believe we ignited this mess, but I also feel you've escalated it excessively. We might have settled it privately as relatives, sans attorneys or authorities. How could we settle privately when you withheld the facts from me, when you fabricated stories, misled me, and plotted to fleece me covertly? But we're relatives. Relatives pardon. Relatives honor one another, Megan, and you dishonored me at every turn. Megan dabbed her eyes and met my gaze squarely. What must I do for you to halt the legal actions? You truly wish to know, absolutely. I require Robert to appear here in person and offer his remorse to me. Not through you, not via a call. I need him to arrive, face me directly, and own up to all his misdeeds. He refuses. He's overly stubborn. Too stubborn to seek forgiveness from his mom, but not too stubborn to attempt a theft. His mom. He senses disloyalty from you as well, Eleanor. Disloyalty for standing up against his assaults. Disloyalty since you prioritized attorneys above kin. I chuckled. It was involuntary, a harsh chuckle rising deep from within me. Megan, do you truly believe I favored attorneys over kin? That's far from the reality. I opted for fairness over disloyalty. I selected self-respect over shame. I picked honesty over deception. Yet we were kin. Kin. Kinships support one another. You attempted to ruin me. Megan rose to depart. So there's no path to mend this. The path to mend it was avoiding it altogether from the start. Once she departed, I lingered on my veranda, gazing at the sun dipping below the ocean. The surf pounded the coastline in its timeless cadence, unconcerned by the personal conflicts playing out ashore. 7 days afterward, Thomas contacted me with the concluding update. Mrs. Crawford, Robert, and Megan took a plea bargain. They'll face a penalty of $25,000. Each will complete 200 hours of public service and remain under supervision for 2 years. No prison term. None, though a lasting criminal mark will follow them. Plus, the fabricated medical statement has been formally invalidated. Your psychological fitness stands fully cleared in the eyes of the law. What about the attorney costs? They've shelled out more than $30,000 for their defense team. Adding the penalties and attorney costs, it ran them over $50,000 in their bid to steal your residence. $50,000, roughly half the worth of my dwelling. They ended up forfeiting more cash in their failed theft than they would have pocketed had it worked. That evening, solitary in my reclaimed abode, I reflected on the full scope of events. I'd forfeited my boy. That stung as the deepest reality. Robert had favored grudges over remorse, arrogance over mercy. Yet I'd acquired something far more precious: my self-respect, my autonomy, and the assurance that Eleanor Crawford remained a resilient, sharp-minded individual able to shield herself from any peril. My 7 decades hadn't rendered me a vulnerable senior. They'd shaped me into a savvy matron equipped with networks, allies, and the resolve to safeguard my lifelong achievements. The following month, I resolved to pursue an unprecedented step, engaging a part-time domestic aide to manage the property during my absences. Not from incapacity on my part, but to guarantee no intruder could breach it undetected ever again. I also replaced every lock, added surveillance systems, and revised my estate plan to bequeath the home to nonprofit causes rather than Robert. If he craved complete monetary self-sufficiency, he'd have it in full. Half a year on, a note arrived from Robert. A note, not a phone conversation. He lacked even the boldness for a face-to-face exchange. "Mom, I trust you're thriving. The grandkids inquire after you. Megan and I have absorbed the morale. Perhaps one day we might reunite as kin." I left the note unanswered. Genuine kinships avoid treachery for profit. Genuine kinships spare their seniors from disgrace. Genuine kinships forego schemes involving forged papers. Robert had deemed wealth superior to his parent. I deemed my self-respect superior to his absolution. We each endured the fallout from our choices. I resided in my seaside haven, liberated, self-reliant, and serene. They grappled with obligations, a stained legal history, and the communal disgrace of attempting to defraud a 70-year-old matron. The quiet form of retribution had prevailed, and Eleanor Crawford had demonstrated that dismissing an elder female as the costliest error imaginable.